Hey everyone, and welcome to today's weekly Wrangle. My name is Tyler Bay. If this is the first time you've joined in, this is all about industry news, live Q&A, and just talking about the month of, what is it now? May, I think? Yeah, so we're just kind of here to hang out, talk about industry stuff and whatnot. So feel free to add in questions, comments as we go along. I'm going to start off with a little bit of news and then move on to some art reviews towards the very end. But before we get to all that, I want to tell you about the latest course that I dropped last week, which is Houdini for the New Artist. Many of you guys might have followed a previous version of this course before, but what's great about it is that it's free and it's perfect for beginners who are starting Houdini for the very first time. I basically redesigned the course from the ground up. So we talk a lot more about karma. We talk about LOPS a bit more, troubleshooting techniques, and just in general, what it takes to get started in Houdini as a beginner. It's oftentimes very intimidating. So I wanted to offer some practical advice and things specifically for beginners to help you guys out. So be sure to check that out if you or anyone else you know is trying to start Houdini for the first time. Moving on though, we have industry news. So let's check it out. This first one here is from Effects Guide. It says, NVIDIA is collaborating with top academics to present the 16 SIGGRAPH papers. And so here they list out a few of the main topics that are going to be covered. A lot of neural stuff I notice is on the agenda. And that makes sense. I mean, we're talking about NVIDIA here, and their whole thing is machine learning and neural networks and everything. But some of the stuff here is really cool. So as an example here, we have a neural tool for multi-skilled simulated characters. And check this out. What it does is it figures out the animation of the character using AI. And so typically, let's say you're working on a real-time animation. Typically, what you have to do is you have to line up the animation clips in such a way where it can have one thing triggered after another, generally speaking. And so, in other words, you're kind of stuck with just a handful of animated presets. But with this neural tool, what's cool about it is that it creates very unique animations depending on what's happening in the environment. So you're not really stuck with clips necessarily. You're just stuck with the character that reacts to, let's say, a boulder falling on him and then getting up and then, using his shield or whatever to bash something away. It's all unique animation that's generated on the fly. That's what I'm getting here with this neural tool. And I thought it was super cool that they are going in that direction. I mean, even just the quality of the movements are, I think, really improved quite a bit. So you see him fall there, you get up, kind of, braces himself again. Anyway, it's super cool. And it looks like you can also do morphing with this as well. So they show how you can go from a lion to a buffalo to a pig to a rhino. I'm not really sure exactly how it works under the hood, but I thought that this is something to keep an eye out for because there's a lot of interesting stuff happening here. The next one here is bringing virtual reality to lightweight glasses. So it says most virtual reality users across 3D digital worlds they put on bulky head-mounted displays, but researchers are working on lightweight alternatives that resemble standard eyeglasses. So I personally have never used the glasses, the AR glasses, but I could see how that would get a little heavy. You might need like a little extra brace on the back of your head to keep it on your head because it's so heavy or whatever. But here they're working on a lightweight version, so that would be really cool. Yeah, looks like this is VR collaborations between Stanford and NVIDIA, who are going to be at the conference here talking about that. There's also a light bulb moment with new levels of real-time lighting complexity. So another thing to think about in the future is how real-time is going to handle global illumination. In other words, how lighting bounces around scenes. So think of a window, right? Light comes in through the window, it bounces around the room. To do that in a real-time engine can be very difficult. So what they're doing here is making progress on those algorithms. And so here we can kind of see that this research is done by the University of Utah. And it looks like there's all kinds of folks working on it. So really cool. If we go forward here, we can kind of see that we have this sort of noisy signal being interpreted and cleaned up, basically. So for more info on that, check out what the University of Utah is doing. So cool stuff. And then last but not least on this article, we have the neural rendering, NERFs, GANs, and power synthetic scenes. So what this is talking about is the idea that you can generate scenes using keywords, and you don't necessarily have to feed the algorithm specific images to generate 3D scenes. So I think the example here is that this image, I believe, is made using just AI. And I believe all you do is you feed it words and it comes up with this picture of a lady here. So I think it's something along those lines. I'm not too sure about the details on this either. But that kind of stuff is going to be talked about quite a bit coming up in SIGGRAPH. So definitely be on the lookout for these new technologies. Okay, so this next one here is talking about Epic Games over the last 12 months and some of the cool stats that have been released on RealTime Engines. I know many of you guys probably wonder, all right, how popular is RealTime? Is RealTime really going to take over the VFX and film world? How much is it going to do that? How much is it not going to do that? Well, according to this article, things are strongly heading in the direction of real-time production. It says that according to respondents, which who knows who that is, but according to the respondents of this survey, 85% agreed or strongly agreed that real-time technology is very important to the future of the company. While 82% share the same level of conviction that the metaverse will expand how they interact with customers. Now, this last one kind of makes me scratch my head a little bit. I mean, I think that might be sponsored by, yours truly, Mark Zuckerberg or something like that. But yeah, no, I didn't sponsor Metaverse, actually. That would definitely be Mark Zuckerberg doing that. But anyway, it just goes to say that, a lot of folks think that real-time engines are going to be the future. So it looks like there are, where is it? I think about like 500,000 people or something crazy like that who have an Epic Games account. I remember reading that somewhere in here. But yeah, the bottom line is that this is going to be used on Jungle Cruise, Suicide Squad, Free Guy, Mortal Kombat Legends, Venom, Let There Be Carnage, Dune, Spider-Man, No Way Home, and the Matrix Resurrections when it comes to using real-time engines to generate content. It also talks about how if we have these stages, which are in-camera visual effects stages, so I see VFX up and running. Right now, there's 250 of these stages across the globe. So that's quite a bit, actually. And at one time, using real-time technology in film was considered to be experimental. Now it's being adopted across the entire workflow and used for multiple content or a multitude of content. Real-time workflows are impacting projects at every stage of creative life cycle, from conceptual writing, virtual art departments, location scouting, production design, and final frame visual effects. Now, I want to play devil's advocate on this for a minute and, just try to take the opposite argument of real-time engines. And, there is an argument to say that real-time engines are going to take over everything. But there are still plenty of things that, in terms of quality, can't get you that last 10 or 20%. A great example would be simulations. Yes, it's cool that we can do real-time simulations, but just because it's possible doesn't mean that it's going to be the best solution for, let's say, a movie like Dune, as an example. So, I think some folks ask, well, is Houdini going to get threatened or replaced by real-time engines anytime soon? And I don't think so. I don't think so at all, actually, because there are plenty of tasks that need quality above all else and are going to be computationally expensive. Now, when it comes to texturing, modeling, and even previs, that kind of stuff absolutely, I think, can be replaced in many ways with these real-time engines. But I do think that there's going to be maybe a large component that's real-time that then gets mixed with other things that are just kind of traditionally made. A great example, again, would be like simulations. So water effects, destruction effects. Maybe the idea is that you would do that in Houdini and do those computationally expensive things and then bring that over to a real-time engine to be used in previs. But even when it comes to the final render, I still don't think that what you have right now in Unreal can really match the quality that you would get from Arnold or Redshift or Karma, RenderMan, any of those render engines I just mentioned. So something to think about in the future. It is, I think, going to be taking over many areas, but I think it's going to be kind of side by side with the traditional mediums. But that's just my personal opinion. All right. Well, anyways, moving on. We have this here. Studio Tiny Build has introduced unlimited vacations for its staff. And this is actually a question I have for you guys. Before I tell you my opinion on unlimited vacations, do you think unlimited vacations are a good idea? Do you think it's great, or do you think it's terrible for the organization, or are you somewhere in between? Go ahead and add that to the comments if you're following along, and I want to know what you guys think about this. The article here says, publisher of indie games Tiny Build announced it's providing employees with unlimited pay time off. The new policy will be introduced as an experiment, and its results will be summed up by the end of 2022. Several divisions of indie games publisher Tiny Build provided employees with unlimited vacations as a part of an experiment that will continue till the end of 2022. So the founder and CEO, Alex Nichiporchivik, I think, announced the news on Twitter, adding that unlimited paid time off will be first granted to employees of two Tiny Build studios and its publishing units. He didn't specify which studios will take part in the experiments. People shouldn't worry about how many paid days off they have left in a year. Life needs living, is what the CEO wrote. So, in addition to unlimited vacations, they will also have 2 more non-working weeks a year before New Year's and during the Steam summer sale. At this time, apparently, all employees of the company have paid time off. You know, and it's not just, by the way, Tiny Build who is doing this. I noticed that this is a trend happening with multiple studios and multiple companies, even outside of 3D and VFX, where you have unlimited vacation. And this is from Seal of the Gods. It can be a good thing if it's used in moderation. And I think that's the key, right? I think that's one of those things where it's like, all right, take it to its logical extreme. If I get unlimited paid time off and I just don't show up every single day and you keep paying me, like, where does that stop? And I think that's where, for me, this gets a little bit weird, right? Because it's like, all right, well, I have unlimited time off. You're not telling me how much that is, but at a certain point, I'm going to get fired if I don't show up to work, right? So where is that line? And I think the problem is that that line isn't clear with a policy like that. And I think it provides this sort of vague ambiguity for workers that lead them to fear that they're going to overstep that line. And I think in practice, it might mean that folks actually take less vacation for themselves because they fear that they don't know where that threshold is. So this here is from CEPWIN. Sometimes it may be unlimited vacation, but minimum hours. So yeah, there you go. That might be a solution to that, right? You have to work a certain number of hours, but you can otherwise take as much vacation. I would still say, though, that it just makes the computation a bit more complicated, right? Because, okay, if you have to work a minimum number of hours, then that means you still have to be there for a certain amount of time, whatever specified by the minimum hours. but then yet otherwise it's unlimited. So I guess it's really not unlimited. I don't know. For me, if I had employees that were full time and I had to figure out vacation, I think it would be better just to have solid, clear, understandable expectations to give people than to kind of go in this gray zone where folks don't know if they're stepping over the line or not. So I'm personally not a fan, I guess, of the unlimited vacations, but maybe I just don't understand exactly what it's there for. So, anyway, interesting stuff I thought I'd bring up. Next up, we have a cool volumetric clouds generator for Blender. And I noticed a few articles about simulations and effects tools in Blender. There are, I think, a lot of cool things, happening right now with effects in Blender. They recently introduced a lot more nodes to their workflow, like a more kind of Houdini-like experience. But I still think that the quality you're going to get from Blender isn't going to be as nice as Houdini, generally speaking. Now, these clouds aren't half bad. I think if you had to make something more custom, you might struggle a bit. But one thing to keep an eye out for as an effects artist is the convenience and the simplicity of making some of these effects in Blender. Depending on the situation, depending on the clients, maybe you don't need to go crazy with Houdini. Maybe all you need is just some simple volumetric clouds and you have the tool all figured out for you and you don't have to go inventing the wheel. So watch out for situations like that with Blender. It could be very useful to include that in your toolkit as you're working with clients if it provides a faster workflow, even if it's a bit less flexible. Next up, we have the global gaming market is set to reach $222 billion in 2022. That's a lot of money. And about half of that comes from mobile gaming. So Data.ai, in cooperation with the International Data Corporation, released a report on the global gaming market in 2022. The analysts forecast that the industry is set to reach a record high 222 billion this year. And so if we take a look at mobile gaming, it just keeps going up and up and up. It looks like everything else, relatively speaking, flatlines, and home consoles are actually going down a little bit in popularity. So that's kind of interesting. The console and mobile experience is also merging. Mobile devices are now capable of offering console-like graphics and gameplay experiences along with cross-platform, competitive, and social gaming features. So that might explain why you have more happening in the mobile space and a decline in the home consoles, because it sounds like that mobile sector is kind of chipping into the market share of home consoles like Xbox and PlayStation. I would also add to that, though, I think that Xbox and PlayStation also struggle with getting affordable parts, like when it comes to improving the graphics, right? I think that the improvements of technology from one console generation to the next has been becoming less and less. And I think that that removes the appeal of a home console, of an Xbox or a PlayStation. I think the whole reason why you got one in the first place was because it provided better graphics and, just a better experience. But if you reach the point of diminishing returns on that, then that means less people are going to be buying consoles for that reason. So I'm not terribly surprised to see that's happening here. One thing that could help the console market go back up is if they have a major boost in graphics in the near future. But, chip shortages and everything else is stopping that for the time being. So we'll see what happens. Moving on, Epic Games announces Unreal Lighting Challenge. So if you want to join a cool challenge, this is catered towards lighting artists. And it looks like there are some cool prizes too. The winning entries will be chosen across two groups, individuals and outstanding students or new developers. The grand prize winner will get $1,000 and receive some cool other prizes from Kitbash 3D and Sketchfab. Contestants who will take the first and second place will also receive some special rewards. So yeah, not too bad. I would love to see what people come up with. I think that one thing that makes Epic Games and Unreal so awesome is the lighting. So I think that'll be cool to see what people come up with. Former Xbox boss is nervous about Game Pass's potential impact. So, in a recent interview, former VP of Xbox, Ed Fries, compared the service to Spotify and its impact on the music business, noting that people don't buy songs anymore. So, it says this: Ed Fries, a former vice president of Microsoft's gaming division, who also worked at the company for almost 18 years, shared his opinion on the growing popularity of Game Pass, expressing his concern that the subscription service might negatively affect the gaming industry. In an interview with Xbox Expansion Pass, Fries was asked what would he do if he was still a part of the company. The former VP did not provide a specific answer, although he mentioned one thing that makes him nervous is Game Pass. He explained that the subscription service scares him because of the impact it could have. Fries went on to compare Game Pass with its somewhat analogy thing, Spotify, which according to him influenced the music industry in a negative way. When Spotify took off, it destroyed the music business. It literally cut the annual revenue of the music business in half. And it's made it so that people don't buy songs anymore. Fries shares that he believes the gaming industry should not rely solely on subscription services, as this could lead to its collapse. But both Microsoft and Sony previously claimed that they think subscription services will never be the dominant model in the video games industry. Meanwhile, Fries warns that the companies should be careful about choosing their business models. So we have to be careful we don't create the same system as Spotify in the gaming business. These markets are more fragile than people realize. He also shared that as a consumer, he likes the subscription services like Spotify. I have all the songs I'd ever want. It's a great deal as a customer, he said. However, he noted that it's not necessarily great for the industry. Although Fries admitted that, unlike Spotify and the music on there, the number of games on Game Pass makes up just a small part of all games sold. So, what do you guys think about that if you're watching along? I personally think that the analogy between Xbox Game Pass and Spotify isn't a perfect one-to-one correlation. I see Ed Fries' point. I really do. Because if we look back at Spotify and what that did to the music industry, it absolutely flipped it on its head. We went from paying $1 per song to having a subscription on Spotify. And I think that, yeah, it definitely took revenue away. But it also asks the question, if Spotify didn't do that subscription model, would somebody else have come along and made it happen? Maybe Apple would have been the first one to popularize this subscription model. And is it true that perhaps the reason why money has been lost in Spotify is because they undercharge people, because they didn't pick the right price? I would argue that that could be more of the thing to talk about. Like, did Spotify make the mistake of pricing too cheaply? And still to this day, is it too cheap? I would argue, yes, it probably is. One other thing that I don't like about the consolidation of everything to an Xbox Game Pass, though, is that it also creates this centralized approach to who can sell video games. If, let's say, we live in a world where the only way you can sell video games is by going through Microsoft, then it basically limits the potential of indie developers to make money by making video games. It kind of cuts off the indie game market. Now, I think that culturally speaking, the games market is way more friendly towards indie players than the music industry was. And also another thing as well is that I think that the rewards for being an indie game developer are going to be better than what you used to see as a indie musician. So there's a lot of things that, in my opinion, could be done better if things were to consolidate. I think one thing is you would want to make sure that it's friendly in the royalty structures to indie game devs if everything's centralized to an Xbox Game Pass. And you would also want to make sure that you charge enough for it. But I don't think it's actually going to come to that point. I don't think it's going to centralize to one subscription for all video games. And just look at the TV shows and look at Netflix and Hulu and HBO. These folks can't get to be on the same platform and on the same page. It's just not centralized enough. I think the music industry was small enough and owned by a small enough number of people to actually become monopolized. But I think that when it comes to the world of video games, when it comes to the world of film, if people try to do their own streaming services, I think you're just going to have like 10 different streaming services. Nobody gets along, and then everyone tries to undercut each other. So that, I think, is the bigger risk of a Game Pass. Not that it's like going to become centralized and indie game developers can't do anything. It's that everyone's going to be undercutting each other because nobody's in one spot. But yeah, that's kind of what I think there. This here is from Seal of the Gods. It may take revenue away in the near term, but the long term, it will increase the market share to whoever adapts to that model. And that's the thing too. When a market starts becoming subscriber based, then it's really hard to compete with that low price. And so you're kind of forced into playing with low prices to get people through the door. I can also say that, typically when folks subscribe to something, they usually subscribe for more than 1 month. So even if the sticker price is low, the amount of money or the amount of revenue that you get over the customer's lifespan is often the same, if not more, than they would if there was just one big sticker price for something. So anyway, there's a lot of kind of balances to think about in that situation. But it's interesting to hear what Ed Fries had to say about that particular situation. Okay, well, we are kind of running a little bit low on time here. I went a little crazy on that Xbox, Game Pass there. So let's quickly go through the rest of this stuff. Netflix lays off about 150 staffers amid the decline. Stock price goes down. People get fired. That's not always a bad thing. Sometimes folks need to get fired. Sometimes they earn it, and the only way to do it is to have a downturn and kind of clean house. So I'm not saying that's good or bad. Could be good, could be bad. Don't know. We also have Substance 3D Sampler 3.3 released. So in general, Substance is expanding to sculpting as well as this Sampler 3.3. And so this is their picture to 3D material tool, previously known as the Substance Alchemist. And so the update brings a series of new tools, content, and features that should simplify the process of creating and editing materials and environment lights. The update's highlights is the new content-aware fill feature that can be used to remove unwanted details in a picture. So they're kind of basically taking the Photoshop tools and bringing it over to Substance, is pretty much what's happening here. And well, I haven't had experience yet with the 3D Sampler 3.3, but something to keep an eye on. Students can now rent Houdini Education for $75 per year. And so this right here is available for university students and folks eligible for Houdini Education. And it looks like before this, students could use the free Houdini Apprentice at home with education only available for schools. And so the advantages here is that you don't have a watermark, you don't have resolution limits and other restrictions that come with Houdini Apprentice. So basically, if you're a student and you want to render your stuff out with no watermark, and trust me, you do, then you could check out Houdini Education at a pretty affordable price. Adobe releases Substance 3D Modeler 0.10. I believe this is their attempt to compete with ZBrush, which, who knows, maybe can actually happen. The small 0.10 update brings a new build tool that many ZBrush users will definitely find useful. According to Adobe, the new tool is designed to help Modeler more closely resemble other desktop sculpting applications. In other words, ZBrush. In addition, the update improves pen pressure support, making the working process in Modeler more convenient. So, definitely something to keep an eye on. I think it is possible for Adobe and Substance to compete with ZBrush. It's kind of surprising that ZBrush hasn't had much competition at all for many, many years. And there are plenty of things that are not great about ZBrush. So I think that it would be a welcome thing to have a bit of competition with them. All right, so Houdini also had the OFFF conference, which is held in Barcelona, I believe. Yep, Barcelona, and it's a community of offline, online designers, motion designers, thinkers, sound designers, graphic designers, theorists, developers, professionals, and students. There's a few videos to check out here, specifically Moritz and Vincent Schwenk from Intagma were talking, so definitely check out their stuff as always. Lucas Vojahir and Alexa Serbu from XK Studio, and Will McNeil from The Mill. They were all talking about Houdini, how it applies to the world of motion graphics, and it's definitely some stuff you want to check out. Also, we have some cool artworks of the past month here. This one here is from Rattlesnake. And this here is this crazy, intense, kind of stormy looking abstract thing happening here. Looks like cloth mixed with some grains, some particles, and flashy lights. Can't go wrong with that. So cool stuff there, Rattlesnake. We also have this by Cornflex. We have this crazy underwater creature thing. And I love this. I think that just look how crazy this guy is. He has little orb lights at the end of his tentacles and this crazy like volumetric face thing going on. It's super cool. And I love it when people take abstract art and combine it with something that's not abstract. So maybe taking some sea urchins, some sea life, and then mix that together with something abstract. Because one problem that people have when they look at abstract stuff is trying to relate it to something in the real world. And I know sometimes that's maybe the point of abstract art is to get you to do that. But sometimes if the artist bridges that gap, kind of like this, we know it's a sea creature, we know it's something that's underwater, it actually makes it a bit more fun and appealing. So I really enjoyed this artwork. I think it's awesome. A great use of hair and particles and volumes and all kinds of excellent stuff. This is from Jack Tone. He's an awesome Houdini artist, and he has this really cool bubble simulation. By the way, if you want to make bubbles look really cool, just really push the refraction. Notice how much these bubbles are just getting stretched out towards the edges and how much of this rainbow refraction we get. All of that comes from cranking up your IOR, or it comes from just really bending that light a lot. So if you have water effects and you want to exaggerate the bubbles, kind of like this, a really cool trick that's being used right here is just taking up that index of refraction. But great job, Jack Tone, if you're watching. It is a great project. And then last but not least, we have Artit right here with Valley of Peace with some environment art. Really love this. Looks kind of like Switzerland or something like that, which is gorgeous at the end of the day. Yeah, really like it. I think that maybe I would potentially prefer a little bit more contrast in the mid-tones. But as far as the environment goes, I love the distribution of trees. I love the complexity of what was copied over. It's like we don't just have one kind of tree, we have multiple kinds. And then also the multiple kinds of trees follow along the riverbanks. So there was that thought behind what was there and why it was there. And as an environment artist, that's probably one of the most important things to do. Have purpose behind everything you do. So when you put down that tree along the river, look at what trees belong next to a river and do that for that region of the world. It looks like that sort of detail was taken here, and it really helps a lot. As well as having different colors as you go from top to down. I love having this vertical crop. It makes everything feel taller and more powerful. If this was a wider crop, then I think that it wouldn't have nearly the impact as this vertical crop. So that also was a great usage of the camera. And that is pretty much it. So that about does it for today. I want to thank you all for watching. And I hope that the month of, let's see, what is it? May, I guess we're in June now. Wow. I hope that the month of June goes really well for you. As always, let me know if you guys have any questions about CG Forge. I'm always here to help you guys out in any way I can. And besides that, I also hope that you have an excellent day. Take care.